Today, February 19th, communities across the nation are observing the Day of Remembrance.
It was on this day in 1942 that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the executive order that led to the forced incarceration of more than 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. Our colleague David Ono joins us now with a special FACEism about what this day stands for.
The executive order has been in the news a lot lately. Good or bad, it provides one person, the President of the United States, incredible power. A sobering display of that power occurred 83 years ago today, when the president stereotyped and then violated the rights of a generation of law-abiding American citizens. Out of my many interviews on this topic, my conversation with one Toshi Ito a dozen years ago still moves me today. And we call this episode of FACEism 9066. I first met the adorable Toshi Ito in 2012. She walked me around her neighborhood, sat me down in her living room, showing me photo albums, books, posters. And then she began to tell me her story, growing up with her mother and father in Los Feliz, a house her father worked hard for.
He really loved me, and he took care of me. He was very successful, and he sold insurance in the Little Tokyo area.
But when World War II broke out, life would never be the same because of a simple signature from just one man. February 19th, 1942, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, leading to the mass incarceration of Japanese Americans on the West Coast. Even though the country was also at war with Italy and Germany, only people of Japanese descent were deemed a threat to national security. Toshi recalls being 17 when 120,000 innocent people were rounded up.
We got on a World War I vintage train. It was so old and so packed down, it was just rock hard. It was very uncomfortable. 3 days and 2 nights on that train.
She ended up on a barren prairie at Heart Mountain, Wyoming.
We arrived in a sandstorm. Dirt and sand was just flying all around, you know.
What would follow was 3 years of humiliation. People crammed into barracks, forced to use public restrooms with no partitions, no privacy. The food was terrible, not to mention the barbed wire and machine guns pointing at them. It was a prison. But for Toshi and many others, the worst part, the part that few talk about, was life after these camps and the hate they received when they returned home at the end of the war.
When my mother came back, everybody in the neighborhood knew she was Japanese, so the grocery store and the drugstore and all the stores in our neighborhood, they wouldn't sell us anything. So my mother had to take a bus and a streetcar and go near Chinatown, hopefully pass as a Chinese woman, to buy our groceries.
But the worst part was the terrible pressure on her father.
He tried to get a job, and the insurance company wouldn't reinstate his license or, rehire him. He tried doing physical labor, but he just couldn't do it. We had to sell our Buick, all his office equipment, his steel cabinets, his typewriters and adding machines and so on.
Until there was only one thing of value he had left, a life insurance policy.
And so he committed suicide. I was on my honeymoon. I got a phone call. I had to come home. My mother was waiting for me in the car at Union Station in LA, and that's how I found out. I just started to cry, and I went to my mother and I hugged her and I said, "I'm so sorry," and then when I got home, I went to his bed, and on the side he slept, and I just lay there and I cried, and I could smell his hair tonic that he wore, and I never cried so much in my life.
Toshi and her new husband Jim went on to live a long life together. They had 2 children, Chrislyn and Lance. Today, we know him as the Honorable Lance Ito, the judge in one of the biggest trials in American history, O.J. Simpson.
The internment experience that my parents and grandparents went through does impact my life today.
If there is anyone who understands 906's blatant violation of our constitutional rights, it's Judge Ito.
The fact that you could take a whole group of people identified only by national origin, order them from their homes, order them held against their wills, it's a violation of so much of our Constitution. And we need to pay attention every day to maintaining the rights that we have as American citizens. And that somebody needs to stand up when those rights are violated.
Toshi passed away in 2018. Judge Lance Ito is now retired. But the Ito family gives us a powerful lesson as relevant today as it was 83 years ago. And by the way, it was 80 years ago that Japanese Americans began being released from these camps, given $25 and told to go home, often to a home that no longer exists.
Hello, I'm Mark Brown. Get more great ABC7 content by clicking the subscribe button for our YouTube channel and download the ABC7 Los Angeles streaming app on Fire TV, Android TV, Apple TV, and Roku to watch on your TV.